Dopamine is a word that you would see no negatives to whatsoever if you just cut it out of your vocabulary completely. And if I was going to pretend that all of my videos weren't personal, this would be the one that is probably the most personal. This is an annoyance of mine, but it's not just a pet peeve. It is really fucking with the way people think. Now, this seems crazy. It seems like a really weird hill to die on. It's just a word, and I'm attacking the entire world because everybody uses the word dopamine, even people close to me in my life. But you should stop. I'm going to give you 3 like really concrete examples of why it fucks with the way you think. But I'm also just going to rant for a second about the way that it gets used in our fucking media, because it's not just random people that are using it to be relatable and cynical and try and find a easy way to make it sound like they know what they're talking about. Everybody is leaning into this language. Therapists are leaning into it. Self-help authors are leaning into it. Psychology articles are leaning into it. Dopamine has become the shortcut to explaining why anything works. And it's such a bad fucking way of explaining why something works to somebody. The main use that it has is that it creates an audience that will be on your side as long as you say their favorite word. It sets up people to consume media. It doesn't set them up to use strategies well. And you know what? I have a ton of sympathy for that, because we live in an age where you want to cut through all of the mass amounts of information, trying to decide what is true, what is effective, what works for you, what doesn't, and find the core hard science of it, because that feels like the only way that you can prove to yourself that it's worth living by something that is like given to you as advice online. It's a shortcut to an authority that doesn't help you, and so I want to make you more sensitive to the way this word is bad. So here's the first point. You cannot feel dopamine. You have no relationship with it whatsoever. You don't associate it with any specific thoughts. You don't associate with any specific feelings. If you are understanding the way that a method works, or a strategy works, or advice works, by knowing that it boosts your dopamine levels, the only thing you can go by is the end result. And you also can't confirm or deny your dopamine levels. You don't have a cyberpunk mod installed in the side of your head that lets you monitor whether it's fucking high or low. So all you can do is have this linear, non-relatable correlation of, if I'm doing stuff I want to, my dopamine must be high. If I'm not, it must be low. You are giving yourself no cues whatsoever to understand at what point in the process does it fail for you. If you know what it feels like to be tired, or to be exhausted, or to doubt yourself, or to be pissy and resentful, okay, those are feelings that you can identify and respond to. They're feelings that you can reflect on. They're feelings that you can understand all of the sources of. Dopamine is fucking nothing. If I tell you that this strategy will make you feel more energized, you can at least call me out on that bullshit. You can go through it and say, you know what, I didn't feel more energized. If I promise that it'll work through dopamine boost, I am making you hopelessly dependent on this trust, because you have no fucking way of being part of this process. And the second point is that this changes the way that your habits all interact with one another, because this is an issue for monitoring one problem, but what if you have multiple? Because you just have this one single metric. Your dopamine is high or low. So what if I introduce multiple habits at the same time? What if I decide to stop drinking coffee in the morning, I decide to start exercising, and I decide to start, I don't know, giving myself affirmations every morning about shit? How am I going to know which one of those things is responsible for the dopamine boost and which one is not? What if one of them is working really, really well and the other two aren't doing shit? What if all 3 of them are contributing equally? You have no way to kind of personally organize these things between one another. An analogy of this would be like, let's say that you have a basketball player's stats and you're trying to evaluate their play style by looking at their scorecard at the end of the season. That won't work, because you can get points in more than one way. You can get it scoring goals, you can get it with assists, you can get it with, stuffing. There's lots of different things that can contribute to your score at the end of a season. So just looking at the score gives you no fucking information about what's working for that player and what's not. What if their defense sucks? What if their offense sucks? You don't fucking know, because you're just looking at a single metric that can be made up of a million different things. So it's an issue with one habit, but it's an even worse issue when you're trying to consider multiple. And guess what? Your life is full of fucking habits. It's not just down to one thing. And because of that, because it makes it so inherently hard to navigate, people that live and die by this fucking dopamine obsession really quickly start explaining it as a universal issue. Because why the fuck would you investigate the individual issues of a player if the only thing you can look at is their total score at the end of the day? It makes you an absolute fucking stranger to yourself, because you're never looking at the way that you have a relationship with a particular habit, whether that's through thoughts or feelings or behaviors or whatever. You're just trying to understand if your dopamine levels are high or low. You're doing this reverse process of understanding yourself. And that's kind of the third and I think the worst outcome of this dopamine mindset, is that it really does encourage just losing yourself as an individual. It makes it so that everybody's problem is reduced down to this single objective biological process, right? I'm no longer Justin, this dude that struggles with X, Y, and Z. I am just one of a million kids struggling in this dopamine economy. And I honestly think that is a huge part of the appeal for people, because when you don't know why you're not able to do the shit you want to do, there is such an appeal in the idea that you don't have to understand that complexity. You just need to find some sort of universal answer. Everybody lives and dies by their dopamine levels, so I live and die by my dopamine level. I don't need to look at myself anymore. I just need to find the strategy that is so effective that it works for absolutely everybody. And that's what you are participating in when you reduce everything in psychology down to fucking chemicals. It is the exact same reason why kids who feel cynical about their romantic relationships start saying shit like love is just a chemical formula in the brain. There is such an incentive for you to make things simplistic and reductionistic when things aren't working for you. This might seem really extreme for a word, but words fucking matter. They do. The words that we have access to really affect the way we think. Language is such a big part in what ideas are easy for us to access. It's a really big part in how we explain things to ourselves, to other people, to how we access ideas based on the way that other people use those words. Even if you're just using it cynically to describe things in a way that's kind of jokey, or whether you are really targeting dopamine as a thing that you're trying to improve when doing research on self-improvement, it is a word that really fucking limits your ability to navigate ideas. So just stop saying it. There's nothing that you can't explain with a word that isn't dopamine that's a little bit more specific. And that's good. That's a challenge, right? It makes you have to think about why you think someone is doing a behavior. Saying that somebody is doing a behavior because it's soothing, even if that's like a little bit generic and inaccurate when you say it, that's at least more of a specific and challengeable idea than, oh, they're doing it because it increases dopamine or something like that. It's not a word that benefits you at all. It's a word that actively harms you. And you also get the little bonus of feeling a little bit smug because you are, being all superior about this fucking word that the rest of the world is using freely. So you should stop saying dopamine. That's everything I have to say about it. So now's the part where I beg for you to like and subscribe and do all the other things that people convince you to do so their videos perform better. You can look at my website to learn more about what I do. And thanks for watching.